Thanks everyone for being here. My name is Frances Ija, and I have been a virtual producer for over 12 years now. And I'm going to introduce our lovely panel. Malkia Lydia is the founding producer of Kuyamba Media. She recovers authentic stories about Black community life and has produced films for installations and permanent exhibits at the Smithsonian Institution, National Civil Rights Museum, DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities, and a Knight Foundation Challenge. Currently, she is completing her first 2 feature documentaries as director-producer with support from such organizations as Black Public Media, ITVS, and Humanities DC. And we'll get to see a clip from one of her works in progress. Thank you for being here. DeShuna Spencer is the founder and CEO of kweliTV, a digital platform that celebrates global Black stories and amplifies Black storytellers. She's a former radio host and producer of Empower Hour, a show that examines social justice issues affecting people of color. Spencer is a former AmeriCorps Vista, a Halcyon Incubator Fellow, a Vocal Fellow, and a Google NextGen Policy Leader. Digital Diversity Network named Spencer the Innovation and Inclusion Social Entrepreneur of the Year in 2019, and she's featured in the book How We Fight White Supremacy as one of the more than 60-plus Black leaders combating white supremacy from their work. Spencer and kweliTV have been featured in Fast Company, CNN Business, TechCrunch, Shondaland, Emmy Magazine, Time, and more. Welcome to Shauna.
Thanks, everyone.
And last but not least, we have Christin Roman. She is the Director of Research, Strategy, and User Experience for Typecode. With 16 years as an interaction designer, user researcher, and product manager, Christin has helped create apps and websites for everything from finance to education. At Typecode, she is overseeing an award-winning team of UX UI designers on a wide range of projects. Her approach to design was deeply inspired by Red Burns, founder of the Interactive Telecommunications program at NYU, where she earned her master's, and who believed that technology is a means, not the end, to human creativity. And that's what we're really here talking about today. What are the technology innovations that are driving creativity, content, and community?
When we think about innovation, we're often thinking about the future, but I've seen that because of technological advances, our access to history is so much different now. I work a lot with archival material. So we're talking about the difference between being able to not just Google, but go to some, publicly funded or university funded or even some private collectors, site and be able to actually see images and evidence and stories that you could hear about, or you hear about or maybe not even knew existed in the past, and to be able to use that. And so, certainly archival documentary, I work as a documentary filmmaker, archival documentary is just trending now and it's out there. But even at the level of just individual content makers and lay historians and folks who are putting things on social media, it's amazing to be able to see images, for example, of Black folks at leisure in the 50s, or the hard work that unsung heroes were doing organizing the civil rights movement who weren't the most famous leaders. Like, just to be able to have access to that is because you can digitize it. You can find it, you can search it, you can order it, you can post it yourself in ways that just weren't available, I'm even going to say like 5-7 years ago.
Okay, you want to sing some? Let's sing some. Oh. Who wants it?
They brought me to Eastern, and students were so glad to find a teacher that loved what they loved.
This woman is amazing.
We're all towering over her. She puts her hand up, and we just all stand. I mean, it's almost like magic.
Choir takes all of these individuals and molds them into one unit.
Eastern for me really was home. That was my family. Our teachers really cared for us genuinely.
From then on, dominoes have been falling to this present day. The reunion is for anyone who ever sang with me in the Eastern Choir all through the years.
We get to come back together and do this one more time.
Give me the bridge now.
We have 4 decades of the amazing Eastern High School Choir.
Thank you, and I'll just pass it on so you know that this woman, Joyce Garrett, almost 300 of her former students from the 70s, the 80s, and 90s, and the thousands came together. 3,000 people in the audience, but she's just one example of Black educators that I feel like haven't gotten their due from that time period. And again, this isn't a story that I could sell to a network, but I could get started on my own, you know, and then have something to show in order to get more people involved and in support of it. So, thanks.
I cannot wait to see that. I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. That just looked incredible. Christin, I'm going to go over to you now. Your company has used the Evercoast platform for volumetric capture in creating your latest app. Can you talk about how that process worked, and how has the use of AR advanced how people tell stories?
Hello. Oh, okay, it works. Yeah, hi. So one of our, let me just back up real quick and talk a little bit about Typecode, which is the design and development agency that I work for. We are mostly based in Brooklyn, but I live here in Austin, and we're kind of, like a lot of tech teams these days, really distributed. And basically what we do is use technology, mostly web and native apps, to help our clients tell their stories. So we have worked with American Documentary before to, much to what you're saying, to help them. They have this huge archive of materials and of documentaries they've done over the years. We built them a new website that helped them to better reach their audience online. So it's not, sitting around and waiting for something to air on PBS anymore. You can actually go online and you can watch the stories right away, and even download like activist packs if it's a story that really interests you and it's an issue that you want to actually do something about, kind of enabling their audiences to get out in their communities and do something about it as well. We have done a lot of work with A24 in the past few years, the film distribution company, Moonlight, all of the Ari Aster horror films, X, The Whale, I think is their most recent one, Minari, Everything Everywhere All at Once. They have been an incredible client to work with because they have such amazing stories to tell. And during the pandemic, we built them a platform called Screening Room so that they could actually, they had all these movies they were releasing. At the time, it was Minari, which was getting a lot of Oscar buzz, and they literally had no way to have people watch it. So they came to us, they needed help, they needed to get it online, but they also wanted to make sure that it wasn't an A24 project, it wasn't their brand, it was the movie, it was Minari. And so we were able to come together and design something that really reflected the movie, the film itself, and create sort of an online event around it. So tickets were sold. There were certain dates and times that you had to come to the website to watch the film. And they even did like an affiliate program with a bunch of independent theaters around the country who were being hit really very hard by the pandemic, so that some of the revenue from the ticket sales would actually go to those independent theaters, and those independent theaters could market specifically to their local audiences to watch this film. So that's really the gist of what we do, is help our clients get their stories out in the world, help them tell their stories in interesting ways. And I think the topic of democratization of the production of content has been a very interesting one for the past 20 years that I've been in the industry. But I think there's also a democratization of distribution of content that's really important here. And so when we did our work with A24, we actually helped them kind of discover a new release window in which they could release their films. Like in between the big theater release and the pay-per-view or VOD release, they've kind of like eked out this little window where they get to control the release and they get to release it directly to their audience. And so now they as a brand are talking directly to their audience. And so that's been a really big thing for them. But I think also in terms of social media, you know, we've become incredibly complicit in just like kind of letting Facebook swallow the conversation, letting Google control the conversation. And I think that, I don't know, I'm not a futurist. I hope that there's like some things are about to change here. You know, but there was a time where it wasn't just about, you know, creating the content, it was about posting it and it was about reaching people with it. And now we've kind of let these big companies control the conversation for us. And so I hope that that's going to change. I hope that there's a little bit of a backlash there. But yes, to get to our most recent project, we were just partnering with Powder Keg Media, which is Paul Feig's digital media company. Paul Feig of Bridesmaids, Freaks and Geeks, one of my personal favorite shows. He started a digital media company specifically to elevate female, LGBTQ, BIPOC, disabled filmmakers and give them a platform to tell their stories. And so Powder Keg Media came to us with this story. They wanted to create a romantic comedy that was interactive, that we kind of put in the hands of their viewers and let them play with it and let them kind of decide the outcome of the story. They pitched this to Verizon, who ended up backing it. And the interest there really was, you know, when you think of interactive storytelling, you might think of like Bandersnatch or something like that. You might think of something really futuristic and sci-fi. Verizon was like, this is cool, like a romantic comedy that's interactive. Like, we don't know if that's ever been done before. So they were super excited about it, and they brought us on to design and build, you know, basically what the story was, but what would the experience be? What would the app be? What sorts of things would the user actually be controlling, and how would they be interacting with the story? So we were in charge of designing all of that out. Through the process of that, we decided that we wanted some kind of playful moments where the user could just kind of just play with the app a little bit, like suspend the story, suspend the plot line for a minute, and just like give you some moments to explore. And at the time, this was not the only client of mine at the time who was like, oh, people really want to get out of their houses. Like, we got to give people an excuse to get out of their house and like get around, you know, the pandemic's bringing everybody down. We got to get outside. And so initially we were like, oh, so we'll do like some location-based things, like have the user go and explore their neighborhood or like go to their local coffee shop or whatever. Fortunately, we backed off of that. And we decided instead to do more of an alternate reality moment. And so there are several AR moments throughout the app. Basically what we learned in beta testing is that people don't really want to go outside. They don't really want to leave their houses. Like, every picture that our users were taking in this app were like of their living rooms, essentially. We're like, okay, people don't want to go outside. Like, let's just nix that whole idea. So what we did was one of our stars, Sam Asghari, who, if you don't know his name in his own right, you might know him as Mr. Britney Spears. He was one of the stars of the film. And we got him on a volumetric stage with Evercoast. I think it was the one out in California. And took a bunch of shots of him doing different things, acting out different things. And so now that experience is part of the app, where you can you have Mr. Britney Spears at your disposal. You can kind of decide what it is that he's doing, and you can place him where you want to place him, and play around with that. And it was ended up being kind of the killer feature of the app, it turns out. And what was really cool was how gung-ho Sam was about doing this AR experience. Like, as somebody who's been working in tech for a long time, I can get kind of jaded by these things. But the fact is, the cast was like so excited about doing something interactive, and he was so excited about like yeah, people are going to be placing me like on their desks and on their dining room tables and whatever. He had his Instagram followers. He was like, if you take a picture of me in the app, tag me and I'll repost it. Was just like super, super into it. Yeah, so we used EverCoast for the AR, and they've been a great partner and fun to work with. And I don't know, did my clip make it in time?
Meet Rob.
That's a robot, but he's so real and so muscly.
And action!
This should be exciting.
Mr. Right is an interactive romantic comedy where the users are in the driver's seat making decisions.
There is a choose your own adventure element to it where we're blurring the lines between narrative content and game content.
Where did you and this Rob meet? Running in the park. He's a friend of Jay's. A women's march. Mom, I'm so sorry. I can't hear you. I'll call you back.
We've also incorporated augmented reality, meaning on your phone, you're able to take a picture with Mr. Right and create his social media profile.
When you think about all the equipment that is on a production stage, so much of it is powered by the need for strong connectivity. With 5G, we have this perfect mix of different technologies such as motion capture, volumetric capture, virtual production. You're able to create these higher resolution assets that ultimately fans will see as more lifelike than what people can experience today.
It was really cool, I had a lot of questions coming in because I've never done anything interactive. So it was really interesting to see something that was shot within minutes, render and be presented in a cool way.
People really do want to interact with the content. They want to feel part of it. I think the audience is going to have so much fun jumping through these different mediums.
That's really cool. Thank you, Christin. DeShuna, streaming has completely changed the game in terms of broadcast content available anytime, anywhere. What opportunities has streaming tech created for you at kweliTV, and what technology challenges are you facing as you try to reach a wider audience with more diverse programming?
Thanks for having me. Very, very great question. So I started kweliTV for people like you, so when I started the company, I remember speaking to like about 100 filmmakers. A lot of them were trying to get their content out there. And the reality was that for a lot of diverse filmmakers, they may have done the work to get the work done, but when it came to actually distribution for a lot of larger platforms, they really weren't giving them an opportunity. Now, I will say because of technology, it makes it easier for me to start a streaming service. Historically, for a lot of companies who want to create like platforms or create channels, you had to work with a cable company. Starting a CBS now would be very expensive, right? And so it's very hard to kind of really put yourself out there. But because of technology, it doesn't cost that much money to be able to actually create a platform to showcase work. In the 90s, I remember I was talking to an old head old head filmmaker, and he actually was trying to create his own channel in the 90s, and he was saying how cable companies were literally saying, no, we have BET, we're good. I mean, they weren't giving a lot of diverse channel makers the opportunity to be able to start their own channel on a lot of these cable networks. And so for a lot of people, they were able to raise money, millions of dollars actually, but for some apparent reason, a lot of these cable networks were like, no, we already have our 1 or 2 Black, Latinx, whatever channels, so we're not gonna give you distribution. And so the beauty of having a platform like mine, one of the reasons why I started mine, I could basically dismantle that. I started kweliTV to dismantle that gatekeeper mentality where I'm begging for Comcast to get, although we are on Comcast now, they've been great. I don't want to I'm like, wait a minute, I get a call from Comcast, DeShuna. So just a caveat, we are on Comcast. But historically, for a lot of these cable platforms, it was very difficult. Now, fast forward, technology is changing so fast that while we are dismantling gatekeepers, I still need gatekeepers, like reality, right? Case in point, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the FAST industry. Are you familiar with the term FAST? So basically, if you have like a Roku app or if you have a Samsung TV, you can go and watch a bunch of free live channels similar to the cable experience. That's called FAST, right? And so now a lot of these companies are saying, okay, like for instance, we have a streaming service, you can rent watch our content either through rental or subscription. Now I can also have opportunity where I can create a fast channel similar to how cable networks work and have my content fed through a live feed for 24 hours. So to basically to diversify our revenue model, because as a Black-owned streaming service, it's hard. Like I started a company with $20,000 and a dream. I think Reed Hastings started Netflix. He started with like $1 million. I think he owned like some other company. He sold it in order to. I sold blood and it's plasma. That's all I could do. Like I could not actually sell anything. I had nothing to sell. So I didn't have as many resources, but I've been able to work really hard to build my company. When I started that, fast didn't exist, but now it does. So like for anyone, when you're in business, you see, okay, this is a trend, so I need to diversify my revenue model to go with the new trends. So for me, it's fast. Now, it's been really difficult to get a lot of these fast distribution deals. We've been able to get a few, but honestly, a study just came out from Variety, and they said that while there are 14% of the population who are African American, 2% of the fast channels focus on Black content. They did a study in 2022, and then they did another one this year that just came out. And so I have been trying to get on these fast channels for like 4 years, like Samsung TV Plus, the Roku channel, Vizio, like the big players. We're on some smaller players, but to get the big players. I know people who are on the big players, they say like that's their revenue stream. Like that's how they make their money is these fast channels. And so I'm like, well, okay, we have amazing content. You know, we work with filmmakers around the world. They've been in film festivals. They're award-winning. Obviously, you know, we can get distribution, but it's been very difficult. And the reality is that a lot of the companies that are getting distribution, they're not Black owned. Like they may have Black focused, and they may have Black content, but the Black people actually aren't the owners of it. And so when I usually talk to a lot of these companies, for them, they don't see the difference. Oh, it's some Black content. They don't know the difference between your documentary and, you know, some other type of content that may be reality-based or show very stereotypical content about the Black experience. And so it's very hard sometimes to educate people about like why this is important. And so I've been doing my part as much as I can. Literally when the study came out, I emailed the Roku channel, I emailed Samsung TV Plus and said, hey, you know, I know you've been basically dragging me along for a couple of years, but this is a study that came out that shows that people, like, you're not doing your part. I actually said that in the email. I only actually heard back from the Roku channel, and the Roku channel was like, you're right, you know, we want to do better. And so I got the email last night. I said, okay, I'm not hated, because a lot of times, you know, as a woman founder, especially as a Black woman, standing up for yourself can be very difficult, because when you stand up for yourself, people like, oh, she's too much, she's too pushy, she's too this when you're a woman. But I also think it's very important to stand up for what you believe in, especially if you have a great product. Case in point, since 2020, kweliTV has been listed as one of the top 10 best movie streaming services by PC Magazine. We're the only Black, only woman-owned, and only independently owned like platform on that list. And we can't get distribution? Like, it makes, thank you. It makes no sense. Like, we're next to HBO Max, like Amazon Prime and Netflix and Hulu, and like us. Like, I started this company with $20,000, so I think that while I have been able to dismantle a lot of these gatekeepers, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done as far as educating a lot of these other companies that they claim they care about diversity, especially in 2020. I mean, in 2020, I had so many conversations with a lot of these companies, like, yeah, you know, you're right. Everything that happened with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, they were thinking about it, right? You know, that was summer 2020. December 2020, cricket, right? Like, it totally, you know, we went from we care about diversity because we saw someone lynched live, you know, on my Twitter feed to, yeah, you know, we're going to launch a Baywatch channel, which is exactly what someone did. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, Baywatch? I know some of you probably love it, so I'm not going to down it, right? But like 24 hours, like you watch it all day. And so for me, I see the disconnect. And so I think that as all of us, the work that we're doing, we just have to keep pounding the pavement and demanding to be seen and heard.
Is your girlfriend
for nowhere here?
Yeah, sure.
The system had one intention, to put us in prison. It's just that simple.
Again, I cannot snap enough because I think what you're doing is absolutely fantastic. And please, please keep it up. I know it's hard. So I kind of want to do a lightning round right now. This is for everybody. So it's something that I was thinking about as I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about on this panel. And equity is something that is really top of mind right now for me and for a lot of people, especially in the tech space, because everything is just happening so fast right now. So I want to hear from each of you, and we'll start with Malkia. What are some trends that you're seeing now, and what was it like when you first started out?
Well, when I first started out, or at least I'll just go back to a project that I was working on since in 2009. We began working on it, and I remember having this great shoot that we kind of pulled some money out to sort of pay a DP to film on a, oh my goodness, I can't remember, but it was the HDV format, for those you know. So sort of like one of the last holdouts between like tape to fully digital recording. I had a PC at that time. It wasn't a Dell, but I had a PC at that time that could not handle the footage. And there was this whole process where it took like 3 months, you know, through all kinds of little problems, 3 months after shooting to be able to actually watch the footage. Like, that sounds crazy now when you think about it, but that was the kind of thing. I'm literally like, oh, do you have this camera? Do you have this? Do you have this adapter? Like, that was the kind of situation that I was dealing with in like 2009, right? To now where, you know, like I was saying earlier, at least to get started, you find somebody who's got the gear and you can get it in front of people. Like, a world of difference. And at the same time, that film from 2009, which, to be fair, we filmed purposely over a number of years, and then the reunion choir film, just those are my two independent projects, getting them completed. And I would say even for us, the distribution picture is looking great. We got people who say we want it. I love kweliTV. There's all kinds of avenues that independent filmmakers have fought for in the public television space, for example. But getting funding dollars to actually get it completed properly is extremely difficult. And I know that all filmmakers deal with that. I know they do. But I can't help but think of it as an equity issue as well, because if you don't have individual personal wealth to lean back on, or the person who, you know, can introduce you to the person with the pot of money or whatever, you know, you can't complete it, no matter how, yeah. So you all get where I'm going, that it's an equity issue as well, even though it is a truly issue that affects the entire creative community. So that's what I will put out there. So I don't know if that's a negative trend.
No. It's totally true.
But conversations are happening, so that's
exactly.
good. Yeah.
It's the key is getting into the room and knowing how to meet the right people to get in the room. And a lot of times, you know, those in the BIPOC community don't have access to those people. So I think, you know, it could be equity, it could be good because there's a lot of access to easy technology. But at the same time, it's difficult to get into the room and have those conversations. Christin, your thoughts?
Oh, gosh. Well, I was pretty lucky in a way in that when I started getting into the tech industry 20 years ago, it was through my graduate program, the Interactive Telecommunications program, which is part of NYU. This program was started in the 70s, so before the internet even existed. When I was going to school, it was before the iPhone, which students who are there now are like, whoa, you went to ITP before the iPhone. And you know, I've met students from decades before me that I'm like, you went to ITP before the internet. How is that possible? Well, it's possible because the program was started by a woman named Red Burns, who you mentioned in my bio, because she's a pretty special person. She's basically the person who's responsible for public access television. She was a filmmaker in the 70s who was just so convinced that with the Super 8 camera and with new technology for filming, that it should be democratized. It should be available to as many people as possible, and that there should be some sort of public good. So again, getting back to this idea of like content production and content distribution. So a lot of the projects back in the 70s, the main one that I know about was like a basically like a video chat for seniors living in like a senior retirement community, and they would use it if they needed help, if they needed to talk to a nurse or a doctor, if they were lonely and they wanted to talk to each other. So you can just like imagine these crazy things that you could do even before, you know, we had webcams. So because of this woman, because of her ideals, because of how she started this program, ITP has always been 50% women and 50% men. They've always had accepted a diverse student body from different countries, from different backgrounds. It's not a tech school that you go to study the technology. It's a school that you go to because you want to make something. You want to make something that's maybe kind of crazy, that's never been made before. And so you just kind of learn, you pick up the technology as you go because there's something that you want to do. So I was very lucky to start out in that environment where it wasn't weird that it was 50% women. It wasn't weird that I was in this like technology program. It was not a technical program per se, but it was one in which it was the environment was extremely collaborative. Students were expected to work together. We were expected to help each other. We weren't competing against each other. We were working together. So I would say that since leaving that environment and then working in the tech industry, it's been kind of a slow like dawning of, oh, that's weird. Like that's not usually, like everybody knows that there's a gender problem in tech. Everybody knows that there's a diversity problem in tech. I think what's good, the trend is that, people are trying to fix it. We're thinking about it. I know where I'm at in my career now, I do a lot of recruiting and I do a lot of interviewing of candidates for people we want to work with. And, everyone's kind of trying to fix recruiting. But the fact is, if you're just looking at the top of the pipeline, it's not going to solve the problem. So there are certain things we do at the top of the pipeline to, try to make sure that we're interviewing diverse candidates. But what I've noticed, some of my colleagues who I really respect and who have been in the industry as long or longer than I have, it's the trend now is to not just sit at the top of the pipeline and then complain like, oh, our recruiter's not sending us diverse candidates. Like, I don't know, why can't we find more diverse candidates? And actually going out and teaching and going out and mentoring and trying to be part of the solution at the bottom of the pipeline. So I've been pretty lucky. I spent some years teaching at General Assembly, which is, kind of trying to crack this problem for people who can't spend 4 years and, $40,000 in a program at college. They're trying to compact it down into 12-week programs. And when I was there, I worked with one of my colleagues, Rashida White, who I really, really, really respect. She got a group of teachers together to go into high schools and do free UX design classes for high school kids in New York at underprivileged schools. And so that is the trend that I think we need to focus on in the tech industry right now, is being part of the solution at the bottom of the pipeline, not sitting around at the top of the pipeline and complaining about it.
I agree. It's definitely a lot. I've been hearing a lot of conversation about that because it's talent pipeline. Where can we find these candidates? And some people have said, oh, I look and I don't find them. And it's like, but are you really looking hard enough? And I think that's the key right there. DeShuna, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I would say, I think our goal is to try to help with that pipeline through our platform. I mean, we work with over 460 filmmakers. 91% of them are Black and half are women. And so we're really about making sure we're creating that space for a lot of our creatives to be seen. Now, as a business owner, as a Black woman, that's where, wonk wonk, it's not exactly where it needs to be. When I started the company, I mean, even now, I would tell people like, okay, I don't see a lot of people who look like me when I started, and I still don't see a lot of people who look like me now in this space as the owner of a media company. It's just extremely difficult to start a media company. I've met a number of women who start out and then they fizzle because they're unable to raise capital. And so typically when I'm at these type of events, I do ask the audience, like, what are their thoughts? Like, I want to know, like, do you know the numbers? Because most people don't know the real numbers. And so as we know, we're South by Southwest, there's so many tech companies here, but I'm really curious if any of you know this. Of all the money that's allocated to tech startups each year, what percentage do you think go to women in general, and what percentage do you think go to Black women? And don't be shy. You can just blurt it out. I'm really curious to hear if anyone knows what it might be. So women and then Black women.
20% and 10%.
Okay. Thank you for being brave. Anyone else? Zero for
Black women, and I don't know, maybe 1% for women.
Okay. Thank you for being brave too. We're gonna say
5 for women and then 2 for
okay. And where you thank you. 5 and 2. So if this were the Price is Right, you actually would like you would probably win. You were the closest. So it's 2% for women. It was 2.3. But went down to 2% this year. And then for Black women, it was 0.2, now it's 0.34. So we moved up. Yeah, that's the reality. I did not know that when I started my company. If I would have known that, not that I would not have started, but I would have paused. I mean, that's crumbs. Literally, that's crumbs. And so there's a real big issue with people who look like me trying to get funding to build something. And so how do we fix that? There have been so many studies, there have been so many talks about it. The reality is I don't really know. I don't really know what we can do. I'm not sure how many more studies we can put out to change that, except for more people like us behind the scenes who say, you know what, I'm going to make sure that, we're going to, at least percentage of the population, we're going to make sure that we're going to fund that at least. If there are 14% of Black people in the population, the funding should at least be 14%, right? It shouldn't be that, if women make up half the population, oh my God, it should be at least, 40 to, 45 to 50%, right? Make it halfway, like it is for the population. And so I think we have to do our part to make sure and hold them accountable. I know for a lot of other, I would say allies, some, white male allies, and say, hey, before they get their funding, I've heard them say, look, I'm looking at your portfolio. I don't see a lot of Black people. I don't see a lot of Hispanic people. I don't see a lot of women. I don't want your money. I think if more people did things like that, it would definitely help as well. So I don't know the answers, but I mean, the trends aren't that great, to be honest. But I still think it shouldn't stop us from doing the work. I mean, I don't stop. I just find other ways in which we can, become profitable.
Yeah, it's still about leveling the playing field. And I feel like that's one of the biggest things and one of the biggest problems that we're having is, again, back to access and back to meeting the right people and getting the foot in the door. And I think one thing that gives me a little bit of hope, I know Serena Williams, I think, started a VC fund, and we need more of that happening, because if you have somebody of that caliber is gonna reach out and not just look at just one specific type of thing, they're going to be more broad.
Right, Serena Williams, Pharrell Williams on the Williams. Who else? There, Gabrielle, what's her? She's not Williams. Gabrielle Union. Yeah. So there are a lot of people who are creating funds to make sure that there's more diversity. So you're absolutely right. I think if more diverse people are creating funds, then I think it would definitely dismantle that.
It's again just getting the seat at the table. It's getting more people at that table, and I think at the VC level makes sense, especially in tech, because if they're not funding it, then how are we going to get stuff that like that?
I just want to throw in one piece to that
too. Go for it.
Absolutely, of course, a seat at the table, changing how and to whom investment money goes. But I think it's also important to have to make the little artist statement here that we've got to protect the spaces and the ways that we fund art for art's sake and art for the purpose of building community and healing and all the things that art does. There always will be and should be, industry in terms of art making and media making. But there's some solutions that will not be solved by 100% seats at that table, because there always has to be a space where we protect just the value of what media from different voices can do, just for our country as a society.
Absolutely, we need to see ourselves represented in media. It's so crucial and so important, from young to old. Like, if we don't see ourselves, then we're not going to want to pursue those type of endeavors. Christine, I wanted to go back to you because you were talking about how you were exposed to tech at NYU. And there's so many things and new trends happening now. And for me, top of mind is AI, especially with ChatGPT. It seems to be the buzzword. Everyone's talking about it. I know at the company I work at, that's all anyone is talking about. So I mean, which is a little worrisome to me. I mean, AI and all of that, I always get a little nervous when an AI gets that intelligent that they could really write an essay. It's a little scary to me. But in addition to that, what are some things that you're seeing, and maybe what are some new tech that maybe we don't even know about that we should look into more?
Gosh, yeah. I mean, I get scared when I think about AI too. I think there's so much buzz and so much expectation on it right now, and those expectations need to be tempered quite a bit. We actually had a funny moment with Mr. Right where a few months after we launched it, we decided we wanted to kind of add on to it. We wanted to do something new with it. We wanted to add some new features. And somebody on the team was like, well, if we were sitting down and designing Mr. Right now, not 6 months ago, we would definitely be doing something with ChatGPT or something AI related. And so we actually explored the idea a little bit. We were looking specifically at Stable Diffusion, which is one of the visual AI tools, and we were like, oh well. There's a part in the story where Sophia, the protagonist, creates a social media profile for Sam Asghari, who is a robot. I guess I skipped over that part, but whatever. Y'all saw the trailer. The whole point of the story is you're trying to program a personality for this robot played by Sam Asghari. So there's a part where you create a fake Instagram profile basically for him, and we're like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if instead of having all these pictures of Sam already, we let the user choose, we let the user say what they want the picture of Sam to be, and then we use Stable Diffusion's API, and we spit out an image of Sam at a basketball game, Sam in a tuxedo, whatever. And we played with it, and it was just terrible. It was so bad that at a certain point we were like, well, that's part of the joke, right? Because he's a new AI. He doesn't know how to draw hands yet, or so we're like, okay, it's Sam who's creating the images, and that's why they're so crappy, and just trying to cover our asses basically, because we know that we're not going to be able to produce those those beautiful avatar pictures that people have been posting of themselves all over the place. So we tried, and we were like, no, pass. So we just added some new AR features. We were like, that's something we know. That's something we know people are enjoying. We know that it'll work. So let's just juice that up a little bit. But now there's I can't remember the name of it, but there's a tool I came across recently that's gonna design your app for you, and you just plug in oh, I need a dog walking app or whatever, this is my great new startup idea, and you plug in what you want it to do, and so of course we were all playing around with it, and it's just I don't know, I'm not afraid for my job yet. I think that I think that AI is an interesting tool, and it's something that we probably will use. I probably will use in my work. I have a client who we're designing a website for them, and they don't have great imagery. They don't have great photographs. They need to go and reshoot a bunch of stuff. But until then, like, let's just plug some things into this tool and get some placeholder images for them. Like, stuff like that is fine. You've got a startup idea and you plug it into the UI AI tool, and maybe it's not great, but you're like 25% there. Like, now you can put that in your deck and go pitch it to investors. Great. But is it going to take you all the way there? I don't think so. And, with my experience teaching at General Assembly, and this is not in any way to knock the program, but what I found teaching there, 20 years after I had started in the tech industry and was, started out really like cut my teeth doing like social apps and doing social media like before Twitter existed. And what I've found is that young people now coming into tech take a lot of design patterns for granted. And so when you tell them, like, I want you to design a website that does this, I want you to design an app that does that, they're kind of like cutting and pasting together design patterns that they've been seeing all of their lives, probably. Like a little bit of Facebook, a little bit of Instagram, a little bit of Twitter, like, this'll work. And maybe it will for some things. And it's a perfectly fine starting place for somebody who's like just starting out in UX design or trying to imagine their first ever app that they want to design. But if all you can do is look at the patterns that already exist and Frankenstein them together, you're not really creating anything new, and you're not pushing those boundaries. And I think as long as AI is simply looking at the patterns that we as creators have already created, that's kind of as far as it goes. At least until the singularity or whatever. Like, we'll see. But for now, it's like you still need experience. You still need creativity. You still need experimentation. You still need innovation, and you still need taste. You still need a voice in what it is that's being produced. So, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of buzz about AI stuff at South by Southwest this week, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty exciting. You can do some fun things, but it is not the ends by any means.
Yeah, that's what, as I've been kind of doing more of a deep dive and learning more about it, because it was really terrifying me. That's the thing that I keep hearing. It's like, it's okay. It's not going to take your job yet. It can only get you halfway there, but it could help with brainstorming. And this, I just want to say, this has already been a fantastic conversation. We have such diverse thought here. I kind of wanted to kind of go, again, lightning rounds of like, what are some takeaways you hope that the audience here leaves with? Anything you want to highlight? And I remember when we were talking earlier, Malkia, you had mentioned that in the past you have used Dell products to kind of help get your stuff made. So let's start there.
True story. When Amy and GalsNGear approached me about this workshop, it was totally just in terms of my work and relationship to the subject. And then later on in a subsequent conversation, she said, "Oh yeah, and by the way, Dell and NVIDIA are sponsoring." I was like, "Yo, if you could see my work set up right here, right now," I was one of the. Okay, this is like totally a filmmaker nerd thing. I was one of the Dell XPS 15 warriors back when, didn't have to get the other brand. I could get this brand, and I could do from soup to nuts. What's the opposite way? You know the expression, but I could do the whole workflow. And didn't have that problem I had back in 2009 where, oh my God, this thing filmed on this camera needs to be digitized and doesn't, fit here. I can do everything. And then after a couple of years of working on the laptop and that being literally the hub for my business and my creativity, I got a grant and I got a precision station and a monitor and a scanner and the whole situation. And that is the honest to God's truth of how I work and make my things possible, and it's actually affordable, and they gave me some credit, so I could, it works. It makes a difference to be able to have that. And then any designer I'm working with, any post-production house, anybody, they're like, we work on this system, like, I got you. Like, everything I do here is compatible. So, yeah, it's made a difference for me.
Oh, that's awesome. DeShuna, like anything you want, you've already given us such great highlights and things that we need to think about, but anything else that you want to tell everyone, anything else that you're working on, or anything that you want to like plug?
Sure. So go to our website. It's kweli.tv. We're only $5.99 a month and $50 a year, so we're actually pretty inexpensive than the other guys. But I do want to. I know we talked about democratization and everything. I do want to give some hope. So last year I was able to raise some money through something called Republic. It's basically equity crowdfunding. So I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with equity crowdfunding. Has anyone heard of that before? So crowdfunding, like Indiegogo, someone says they want to make a movie, and so you may give them $100, and then you get like a credit or something, or a list on their website, or a T-shirt, like I helped make this movie. With equity crowdfunding, you actually get equity in the company, right? And so it actually got started during the Obama administration because there was this disconnect about creating generational wealth, where a lot of these big tech companies, they were getting money from the people who are already rich, right? So Facebook sales or Meta sales, all the people who are able to get in early, they make a lot of money, or when they go public, if you're an everyday person, you don't have the money you need in order to invest in a company. You need about $1 million in the bank. You have to make so much amount of money a year. So with equity crowdfunding, anyone can be an investor. And so I went on this journey to start raising money for my company, and we raised the most money we ever raised through this crowdfunding campaign, raised $250,000. And I would tell people it was so amazing because 69% of their $250K was only $150, which means most people were just giving, hey, some extra money I made, this month, I could give this. So you can do it. Like if you have an ideal, equity crowdfunding is a really great way to go, especially if you're a woman, if you're a person of color, and you're trying to figure out like how they get there. If you're anyone, honestly, I mean, there are a lot of people who, everyone has basically done it, but for us who have a hard time raising funds, it's a really great way to do that.
No, that's awesome. That's good. Really, really good to know. Christine, anything you want to leave the audience with?
I mean, I think I basically already said it, but I hope that we are democratizing media again. I know for me, coming up in technology in the early 2000s, it was such a special time. It was such an amazing time. It was such a breakthrough time. The fact that, anybody could produce media and could post it. And like I said, I think that we have just been incredibly complicit in letting our voices and letting our creativity be swallowed up by these giant companies, just because they were playing the slot machine on, engagement design patterns, right? And they got lucky. They nailed it. They got it. Liking, commenting, sharing, retweeting, all of that stuff, that did not exist when I started designing and building web apps. It was all experimentation. And now all of the time, all of the energy goes into, how can we make this even more addictive? How can we really, really make it impossible for people to turn away? How can we get people to give us all of their content? The age of the just independent blog that you publish on your own, what happened? It just kind of disappeared. And so I hope that, we're seeing things start to turn around there. I think everybody needs to go home and start their own WordPress blog again, and and start writing and publishing your own content.
That's a good point, because with the algorithms, and then with Meta, they keep changing. 1 minute it's images, then it's video, then it's reels, then it's stories. Then these companies and individuals who are creators, we have to keep changing what you do in order to fit what they think is cool at that moment, because someone's trying to compete with TikTok or whatever. So for us, one of the things we're looking to do is actually create our own platform, where people can have conversation. I don't want to rely on a Meta or Google or Twitter for me to be able to engage my customers. And so that's one thing that I'm doing personally. We're hoping to launch in the spring.
That's exactly what I hope we see more of, is community building, actual communities with things in common and things to talk about, and not just this, big catch-all town square, if you believe that Twitter is the town square.
I just have to say, I know you're going to move to the next phase, but one of the things that I think is extremely inspiring and hopeful is that no matter what the hot platform is of the day, the hot technology, the world cannot deny how much genius and creativity is out there. I mean, you've got folks of all generations creating brilliant content that rivals the most expensively made content. You're having incredibly important conversations about civics and, about, philosophical and existential conversations. I mean, it's all happening. And when one platform dies, it picks up somewhere else. When one platform gets co-opted or a certain technology, people figure out another way. So it may be an ongoing battle to keep these technologies true to real, human progress, but it's going to happen because people create. People create and innovate regardless, and that actually, I think, is the driver of the innovation. Is our, our own impetus to make those things happen.
Snap of the fingers. Now I want to open it up to the audience. Does anyone have any questions for our lovely panelists here? Yes.
For instance, you were talking about the lack of equity already in the industry, especially for women. Then we have the added stumbling blocks of, oh, you're over 40. I'm over 40, single parent with a special needs kids. You hear the door slam. I'm crawling through the window. But it's like, what is your advice about overcoming this lack of equity? We know it's there. We knew it was there for the 100 years. We've known it's there. But how do we overcome this?
I think for me, in my journey, it's been very similar because I worked at a company for 10 and a half years, and it was not the most welcoming environment for someone like me. I'm Puerto Rican, I'm a woman. It took me a long time to get respected. And honestly, what has helped me to kind of want to go into the rooms and be more vocal is finding community and finding groups like GalsNGear, finding other tech groups that focus on, or any groups in general that are just a bunch of people who are in your similar situation, and you exchange stories, and then by then you meet people, and by meeting people and networking, you then get into the room and you can kind of get your voice heard, and you get the confidence to kind of put yourself out there, because it is really hard. So I know for me, what's helped me a lot is just finding a community of people that can uplift you and help you get into, and give you the tools that you need to get into the room and be able to stand up for yourself and be heard and not be afraid to use your voice to get what you want. That's been really helpful for me.
I have to just underscore tribe and community. And thanks to technology, those communities can be international now. They can be intergenerational. GalsNGear is an important one. I'm a part of other communities of folks who have found each other through different platforms. And it's not just about, like, you can do it and encouragement, which is important, but actual skill shares. Actually, I'm a gatekeeper over here. Let me make sure you get heard. I mean, it's important. So I'm happy to talk more, if there's resources I can help share.
Any other questions? Any other questions?
Oh, well, I was just going to echo what what everyone has already been saying. I know that for me, not really knowing that there was a gender problem in tech when I first started out was like a blessing. Because I learned to be loud, and I learned to just voice my opinion. Even when I was talking about something that maybe I didn't entirely know the ins and outs of. I learned how to listen to other people and how to collaborate. And I think collaboration especially has been a really, really, really huge tool. Once I got out of that, that great 50% women in tech environment and was in the real world, was just like, oh, here, I'm gonna be loud and I'm gonna voice my opinion, but also I'm gonna make sure that everyone here is heard, and I'm gonna make sure that we're coming together and that we're coming to decisions together. And so I know if I hadn't had that community to start out, who knows?